Okay, so now I'm going to introduce probability. And what I'll be doing is that I'll be just explaining a few words that you should be familiar with before getting started with probability. So the first one that I'll actually get started with is just an experiment. And I'll just right away start using examples here. What is an experiment? Experiment an experiment will be just some sort of an activity or an occurrence, something that is happening um, with the results that we can record in the end. So, for example, I can flip two coins and observe the results. So let's say, okay, so I'm flipping two coins. I can get heads and heads. I can get tails and heads. I can get heads and tails. And I can get tails and tails. I'm going to assume, of course, that at no times, well, that's an ugly T representing tails. Oh well. I'm going to assume that the coin won't land right in the middle between heads or tails. So I'm going to assume that the coin will either be heads or tails. So that is the experiment, flipping two coins. What is the sample space? What does sample space mean? Well, that's going to be the collection of every single possible outcome of the experiment. So for the experiment flipping two coins, the sample space would be heads, heads, tails, heads, heads, tails, or tails, tails. And each one of these would represent, of course, an outcome, which is a pretty self-explanatory term, probability, of course. And what about an event? What is an event? An event is basically um, any combination of elements within the sample space. So, for example, an event could be getting at least one head, or getting heads once, or getting tails once, or getting tails twice. All of those could be events in this particular experiment of tossing two coins and observing the results. So let's um, let's talk about the actual probability now and how to figure it out. Let's say I'm going to calculate the probability of the event drawing or observing tails twice. So the probability of getting tails and tails by flipping two coins. Okay, so here's what we do. This is going to be a fraction, and underneath in the denominator, we're going to put the number of possible outcomes in the sample space. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 possible outcomes. And for this event, getting tails twice, there's only one possible outcome. So that is the probability of drawing or getting two tails. 1 out of 4. Simple, right? What about, for example, let's just make a slightly more complicated event, even though it's going to be pretty simple. Everyone's going to understand it. Getting at least, what is the probability of the event getting at least, or rather, let me just reword that. Obtaining heads at least once. So heads at least once. So we have a fraction again. Right under here, we're going to, once again, have all elements in the sample space. And of course, one big assumption that I'm making here is that all these events are equally likely to occur, right? That there isn't a chance that I can get heads more than tails and so on. So let's continue assuming that, and the probability of getting heads at least once will be just, well, here get heads twice, so that will count. Here I'm getting heads again, and here as well. So there are three possible outcomes that would be part of this event, obtaining heads at least once. So the probability of obtaining heads at least once is 3 over 4. That's it. So I'll just remind you guys that you can scroll down click on the questions to watch more explanation videos. And good luck with probability.